Okay.
All right. I hope you had a good speed networking break and a coffee break. Welcome back to the Odisha Design Week. Our next speaker is Mark Watson. He's a member of the Board of Advisors for the Odisha Design Council. Mark formed the Design Thinkers Group Australia as a Melbourne-based partner to the Design Thinkers Group Amsterdam. Mark's specialities range from interior architecture, product design, furniture design, service design, design thinking, pedagogy, and management. Mark Watson, you have 45 minutes for your presentation to tell us about your view of how the world around us is changing, and that'll be followed by Q&A. Over to you, Mark.
Thank you very much, Suresh. Let's see if I can get the bells and whistles working for you and share my screen.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm getting there. We're getting there. Okay, can we see the main slide?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, so welcome. It's about 10 o'clock at night here in Melbourne, Australia. I'm looking to talk on heritage and smart cities. I was a panel member of a previous episode of Odisha Design Week with a couple of Indian academics, and we were talking about the development of heritage and smart cities. So without further ado, I shall skip forward. I was doing some research on Odisha, looking at Bhubaneswar, and they rate a mention in the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs Smart City page. And I think I was talking in my the pre-recorded video on the panel session that it's an interesting image because it's an image of a children's playground. And it's relating to smart cities. So most people consider smart cities to be IT related. And it's interesting to see that Odisha have had this up on the main page of the Ministry of Urban Affairs for their involvement, because they are one of the lucky cities that bid for the smart city initial round of, I think, about 50 cities. So the other speaker was saying on the session. So Odisha is very lucky to actually have the first round funding to engage in some smart city activities. But it was interesting that they were putting this up as their main lead image. So yeah, lots of people talking about smart cities, digital solutions for a more livable city and future. McKinsey, one of the many consultancy groups that are engaged in discussions around India. Most of the other major consulting groups are already involved in the 50 current projects that are being undertaken on the Indian initial design cities movement. So, but yeah, smart cities. Lots of organizations around the world involved in it. I just called up this one, Smart Cities Council, which I follow on LinkedIn. And it's about $20,000 to be a member of that smart city organization. So it's probably out of the reach of a lot of small to medium scale innovative leaders in the field. So it's attracting a whole industry. And that's big dollars attached to it, largely on the draw card of the IT techno approach to smart cities. So the Australian government is embracing smart cities, transforming cities through collaboration and partnership, and they are reaching out to the Indian government through institutions like the Australia-India Council, which funds a lot of research work and cross-cultural activities. I myself was a recipient of a Australia-India Council grant in about 2003. I came across to give a talk in Mumbai at a conference there called Design Sutra, if anyone can recall that. Yeah, so I've had a substantial association with India around cities design and architecture. So yes, the Building the Cities of Tomorrow. This is an Australian document which I retrieved just recently, looking at the function to serve humanity. So they might have so they must have a human form. So people are slowly understanding that the IT thing is a bit whiz gig, and we obviously need to pay more attention to the human side, and that's where design is starting uh, to claw back some of the action in relation to the early stage developments, and engage in human-centered design activities around smart cities. So yeah, it is the Internet of Things that is driving the whiz-giggery. There's lots of examples. I gave some in the previous talk around the use of smart metering from the city of Melbourne here. This is a major city associated with my state of Victoria, and they're looking at rubbish bins and meters in rubbish bins to tell when the bin is half empty or full, so they can schedule rather than just sending a team of men out or ladies to go and empty all the bins. If the half the bins don't need to be emptied, they save on that activity. So there's lots of scope for improvement of services, and then obviously with the reduction of outlay for those services, hopefully that monies can be spent in other ways to improve the human condition within cities. So we shall see how that story evolves. But there have been some bad vibes come about from that, especially Google and their Cyborgs Lab in Toronto. And this is a quote from the head, Daniel Doktorov, apologizing profusely that Google's pulled the pin on the project at Toronto. They'll obviously come back at a later date when they've decided what it is they're actually looking to do. But lots of pushback on the loss of privacy, the misuse potential of IT information and the like. So Google has, in this instance, had to pull their head in basically and take a closer look at what they're actually doing, and that sort of relates to how design is of importance through the human-centered design approach, and I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward. Also, Anubu, Professor Anubu, was talking about greenfields. She was mentioning in her talk that one of the early submissions for that Indian government round of funding for the first 50 cities, people were putting forward development for greenfield. That means totally open paddocks, whole new cities up out of the farmlands. And this is an article by Peter Newton from Swinburne University here in Australia. He did this in about 2010. He was talking about green fields and brown fields, and green fields for those people. We talked about that. That is really just taking over farmland and a clean slate, coming up with a whole new idea for a city. Brownfields are a bit more interesting. They're usually large sites. Might be something like an army site that has been repatriated and given back to use in public land, and you're going into that as a defined parcel of land and developing that particular parcel. So that's delineated as brownfield. But greyfield is probably more about what heritage is all about in the Indian context, where you're actually looking at virtually aquapuncture of remedial works across the city. So there might be heritage sites within a heritage city, and we're working the idea of grey fields. So this is the document that Peter Newton was particularly discussing. So working in that grey fields, understanding that you have to work within neighbourhoods and the like, and trying to come up with a good solution for everyone in relation to heritage, city development, and being smart about it. And the smart is not just IT, but the smart is also the integration of the IT within the human environment. So once again, article by Newton on unlocking grey fields to inhibit urban sprawl in this instance. So he's come up with this diagram around smart, sustainable urban land use development regeneration from standard sprawl through green sprawl to green urbanization. Okay, so but India's done it before in a greenfield attempt. I think it was greenfield. It might have been brown. Lekabuzia in the city of Chandigarh alongside Ahmedabad as the new capital, I believe, of Gujarat is Chandigarh, and that's handed over from Ahmedabad as a heritage city. So it's very much on that Parisian model. If you look at Paris, the old Paris and the new Paris. So that was that idea of wholly developing greenfield or brownfield. But by and large, lots of the heritage buildings of interest within the urban centres, henceforth grey fields. So I've given a lot of work. I think this is a conference I gave a paper on in 1997 in Ireland called A Sense of Place. So lots of architects would know of the term sense of place or genus loci. And so I've been talking in that sense around that since about 1997. It's part of my master's by research in industrial design at RMIT University. So yeah, I was talking alongside Charles Correa, Ben Kelly, and Kent Bloomer in that stage, and I developed the concept of belonging and trying to understand how people belong to a place. And in that, I had to actually work alongside and immerse myself in the Indigenous culture within my particular state of Victoria. So it's pretty much a groundbreaking design research project. Although there's lots of people in that space now, I was at the lead in that. So you can see that belonging document at that issue link at the bottom of the page if you choose to. So I was talking about biomic design, came about pretty much about the same time as biophilic design had emerged out of Yale University in the United States. But the Yale University session was working closely with E.O. Wilson, who was the author of Biophilia. My Belonging treatise looked at someone that preceded E.O. Wilson, E.O. Wilson's Biophilia, and a gentleman, professor from China, called Tuan, I believe, and he wrote a book on topophilia, which is very much an area of interest of my perceptual understanding of landscape and environment. So having worked with the Indigenous population, I started to develop interpretive centres and art galleries and the like as part of a regional tourism exercise. The Maya Gallery was one of my projects or concepts that I got up working with them, but also done some heritage building work with the National Wool Museum that's based here in a city in Victoria called Geelong that I have an association with. So these are wool stores that have been converted to heritage and museum interpretation spaces. Okay, so when I did speak in 2010, it was part of a trade mission to India, and this is effectively what I was talking about. 2010, 2011, the experience economy, and trying to get people to understand that what we do in designing museums, interpretive spaces, and the like, is tapping into an economy and is part of the experience economy. So talking about the opera and the ballet, that's part of the experience economy, and it's an industry that is well funded and well resourced, and people earn a living from experience. So designers are part of that experience economy. And I was talking in that instance on heritage hotels. So I was relating then a document from 2003. Mindful this was 2010. And Denmark were calling up culture and experience economy, and showing that the linkage between public and private, and trying to get private investment into public infrastructure to support the cultural industries and the arts. So people have been doing this for quite some time. So there's lots of talk. These were articles from various Times of India newspapers that been talking about preservation of heritage building, the building of a database, preservation of heritage buildings, etc. And it's, I think a lot of people are still talking about this, and there's not that much action. So this is half the problem. On the Indian sense, you're an emerging economy, rising rapidly. I think you're sixth in the World Economic Forum's listing of nations in the world, and rising, and that's only going to gradually grow. So there's going to be a need and a market for this kind of cultural interpretation. So these are other examples from the presentation I gave in 2010 of how old Victorian buildings can live alongside contemporary 21st century buildings to tie in that user experience of old and new. So that's very much a contentious issue in heritage in India. So talking about categories of experience design, entertainment, education, escapist, and aesthetic. There are all various quadrants of the experience environment, and what people are wanting to do when they are traveling. So some people wish to just escape. Other people are going to scenic places. Other people are just looking for a good time. I think I was talking about Goa before, around entertainment, but also an educational. So that's a strong position for museums as interpretive centres of culture going forward. So it does have a strong place in the experience economy. So yeah, the 5 key experience design principles that I was citing back then. Theme the experience. So obviously, in a sense of place, you're looking to theme it around either a monument or a heritage building or the like, and then theming that around a storyline that develops around that particular site. Harmonize impressions with positive cues. So really being positive about putting the story forward to be an attraction and a destination for people. Eliminate any negative cues. So apart from developing the site itself, you have to sort of work alongside the government clients to see what you can do to make the whole area a more aesthetic environment for visitors and tourists. Mix in memorabilia, so tell a story and engage all the 5 senses in creating what's called a living museum, more so than just a static showcase-based traditional style of museum. So there's a whole new depth that design can bring to enhancing experiences, and one of those is through interpretation and lives alongside museum development. So back in 2010, I was asking the people that were attending the conferences I gave in Bangalore, Delhi, and Mumbai. I said, what do you want? Do you want this concept for W Mumbai? I'm not quite sure actually as to whether it got up or not, or do you want experience by numbers? So I'm alluding to there that investors are looking at who's got the most hotels and who has the highest number of patrons in the hotels, and by then just going shopping to pick up a franchise to build a cookie cutter. Um, look down the list, Best Western or Hilton or whatnot, and plant that in India. Or I'm saying, do you want to look to heritage hotels for that visitor experience? So when I did give a talk in Delhi in 2010, I think I was mentioning a young lady came out of the audience after the talk and said, "You have to come and visit my boss. He's working on a project just down from Delhi. It was about a 3-hour drive from Delhi, and it turned out it was Amarnath from Namrana Hotels. So he's very much got that idea of what he sees as the new Indian elite, the middle class, the growing group that is benefiting from the massive increase in the Indian economy, and so it's this is very much the visitation, that experiential aspect of visitation, tourism, and the like. So I also gave a paper or participated in a 2-week workshop in Mumbai, run by the World Design Organization, as it's now known. Looked at an area in Mumbai called Matunga. It was originally designed in about the 1900 to 1920 as a garden city. So there's a whole garden city movement that came about. Walter Burley Griffin is an architect, American architect, that designed Canberra, and he was very strong on garden city design. So I think he was actually doing some work in India from a time in Lucknow and the like. But in Matunga, I was looking at a site with some other Indian colleagues, and about 5 or 6 of us were all working together on this particular site around Matunga. So we themed the experience around Matunga's reputation as a centre for produce. So people would be coming in on the railways and bringing in their produce for sale in markets and stalls around Matunga. So we're looking to the available land use there within Matunga, and I developed the concept of a site over the railway shunting yards in the Central Railway workshops, and developing a multi-story development similar to some developments. I'm trying to think of the name of the place in London where it was a major railway centre, and it's turned into a fairly high-end retail outlet for food and produce to buy. So that was the concept of immersing yourself in an environment, using design thinking tools and methods to interview people, ask questions, get a feel for what's happening, and then develop concepts around that. So I developed this concept where it was a large bird cage by and large, and it was really to sort of revisit a parrot that had long since left the area because of the overdevelopment in there. But I was hoping to build an aviary to house that parrot that encompassed and enveloped the major development concept that we had developed there for Matunga. So since then, using design thinking, the screen on the left, I gave a talk in 2014 at IIT in Delhi around design thinking, and it's very much what is starting to be embraced in architecture. So this is a subject, building the brief, that I was teaching at Melbourne University School of Architecture last year, and I really asking students to not just sit there as the lone genius and think of great things, but to actually go out and ask people what they want, analyze what they need through observation, through recordings, through interviews and the like. There's lots of design thinking tools around to use to gather the evidence to support your concept, and that's very much what evidence-based design is all about. So architecture is only slowly starting to embrace the rhetoric around design thinking and understanding what design thinking is effectively as abductive thinking using social science tools and methodologies to analyze the situation. Okay, so I have given workshops in Ahmedabad on Heritage Smart City Fusion. Went alongside to a couple of wells that were established in Ahmedabad. So we immersed ourselves in those situations. I got the students to go out and ask questions, students and professionals to go out and ask questions of the people visiting those monuments, what they actually wanted to see and achieve. So there were some good outcomes that came from that particular workshop on how to conserve monuments from heavy foot traffic and the like. So yes, so I've got a strong interest in heritage and the opportunity in terms of cultural diplomacy that Australia and Australian designers can play in working alongside Indian designers to look for solutions. So on the left-hand side, I'm seen here on a train with Vikas Dilwari, who I met up with in Mumbai. He showed me through his work on restoration of the Flora Fountain. So we shared notes and an interest in other buildings, and I've got an interest in the future, hopefully, of a building called Watson's Hotel in Mumbai. There's no relation to mine at all, but it's just by association. I'm very interested in that as an interesting building because it was listed on the 100 World Most Endangered Architectural Monuments by Renzo Piano. So it's very much, the Watson's Hotel is very much an endangered building and in desperate need of repair and attention. So I was talking to Vikas Dilwari in relation to that. So I did give a talk at CII Design Summit, Indian Design Summit 2017, quoting here Ezio Manzini, design where everyone designs. So that's that co-design principle that is out there that designers work alongside of and hopefully are asked to the table continually in that co-design effort. So it's not just management co-designing without designers. That's my main consideration at this particular point in time. But speaking around Indian Design Summit, I was talking on the issue of sustainability. So I get involved quite regularly with the Digital Design Society. They've got a bunch of design thinking tools that you can access. I think I've got that on the slides coming forward. And I work with the Global Goals Jam. I have run it in Melbourne since about 2016 on an annual basis, where we use the UN Sustainable Development Goals, largely number 11 being sustainable cities, and then we look to an area that is of interest to that city at that particular time, and good health and well-being was something that we were looking at in 2020 around the city of Melbourne. So the Global Goals Jam is run out of Delhi through World University of Design. I had Samitra Chitta on the previous panel that I was involved with. She runs the Global Goals Jam. We were hopeful of getting one up in Bhubaneswar, but time got away from us. So maybe that's a lead for young students in Bhubaneswar to access the Global Goals Jam via the Digital Society School in Amsterdam. and you too can run your own workshop around these principles. But the Digital Society School largely developed these tools independently, but started to utilize them with the United Nations Development Program education group, because they see these tools empower the community to be able to manage these processes themselves, to come up with an interesting concept around sustainability within their cities, but framed in such a way that it is understandable by governments and funding agencies alike. So yeah, the usual design workshop format is based on the Double Diamond, which is established by the British Design Council as a way of having non-designers understand what designers actually do. So look up the Double Diamond by all means. I think it's been around for about 15 years now. So I largely use that as the format for my workshops, but there are other models around. But for mine, the other models tend to confuse people, and this was good research done 15 years ago to help explain to non-designers what it is designers actually do. So yeah, these are the 17 goals. I largely work in number 11. Currently looking at running one in March for Geelong Design Week, and looking at number 11 and number 14, Life Below Water, because the city of Geelong, where I'm running it, is right on the water, and there's a strong connection between cities and the waterways adjacent to them. So University of Melbourne, I was talking to students there about stakeholders, and this is one of the tools that comes from the Digital Society packs. So the red packs at the top are a bunch of cards that break down a 3-hour workshop that you can work with on a particular problem with people in the workshops through what's called participatory design. And they're all actors, and you're getting their feedback in building a story. So that's the usual format for that. So I'm currently enrolled in a PhD. Strangely, managing my way through COVID and other ailments, and slowly pulling it together. So the Venn diagram on the right hand side of the screen is what I'm looking at in terms of UNESCO classification of cities of design, and by and large looking at city leaders and how design can interact with city leaders through innovation to develop a design culture within their organizations, so design can be better activated within their organizations and their communities. So it's based on the triple bottom line, which is people, planet, and profit, which is the old profit was economy, planet was environment, and people is society, social. So that was the triple bottom line. Used to be just profit, and then people said, hey, we need an environmental impact statement before you make profit. So, and then the social side was added later. But a new way of looking at development, especially in the Western countries, and hopefully emerging into the Indian context, is the quadruple bottom line, whereas environment, economic, and social are paired up with cultural, and that's where museum environment comes into play around community, spirituality, entrepreneurship, and sustainability. And they're talking largely in terms of Indigenous innovation in this sense from this particular paper that I'm citing here. But a lot of people are starting to embrace this new way, this fourth angle to the quadruple bottom line. I mentioned before about participatory design, largely developed out of the Scandinavian regions. It's talking about striving for democracy and democratization of that development process. So asking the people what it is they want, instead of telling them what you are going to give them, you're asking them what they want, and hopefully that will give you insights into the kinds of designs that you can develop. So that's the design research that is being embraced through design thinking. And one of the leaders is Terry Irwin, alongside an Australian academic here in Cameron Tonkinwise. They're talking about transition design, so moving from one situation to another situation. So that transition is a set of processes that is starting to be embraced in lieu of participatory design. It's a new interpretation of participatory design, and people like the DESIS network, Design for Social Innovation, is a strong network internationally. I think Enzo Manzini is a key operative within DESIS network. So with heritage, I'm actually giving a paper tomorrow in Egypt via satellite online on museum environments, challenges and potentials. We actually interviewed the head of the World Heritage Cities Trust in Ahmedabad as an industry expert, and we used a set of questions to frame that interview to look for deep insights into the current state of development of the experience economy, museums, and the like within Ahmedabad as a world UNESCO world city of heritage, and currently looking at Sanskrit Kendra, which is a Le Corbusier design building from the mid 1950s. I think that's fallen into a bit of disrepair, but same time that Chandigarh was developed, Le Corbusier was doing a number of institutional buildings around Ahmedabad, and Sanskrit Kendra was seen as a cultural centre, but in the ensuing 60 or 70 years, it's lost its way, but it's really looking for a new way, a new place within the Indian economy, and we're talking around the experience economy around that. So we've just done this paper called Experience Economy and Museum Development in India. So if you want to look that up, it's currently available for you to read on ResearchGate. It's a website that you can access for academic papers in relation to that. Okay, so that's me. So my three-pronged activities formed a group about almost 10 years ago called the Indo-Australia Design Research Alliance, looking at working with Indian designers and Australian designers, hopefully in India and hopefully in Australia, but tying together key researchers from top academies and universities around the place to build this cultural diplomacy that is part of that cultural mix in that quadruple bottom line. So yeah, my main avenue of activity these days is Design Thinkers Group Australia, but my former product-based and design activities were through my company called Design Providence. So without much further ado, I shall close down the screen and come back to you.
Hi, thank you, Mark. Thank you for taking us on that journey. Let me start you off with a couple of questions. On the face of it, India and Australia seem like completely different countries. What's common to the two countries?
Well, there's a growing diaspora from Indians in Australia. I think they're about the fourth largest population group in Australia at the moment. Mind you, we only have 26 million people in the continent down south. But for mine, it's been a bit of embarrassment, really. It's we're selling a lot more to India than India is selling to us. And with Make in India and the manufacturing sector going crazy over there, effectively we're looking similar situation as Australia has with China in terms of exporting iron ore and coal to support the steel industry. and the like. And because of that trade imbalance, there is almost an embarrassment that we should give something back. And that's what I'm talking about, cultural diplomacy. So I was leaning heavily on the Australian government through the Consul General in Kolkata to support you guys so we can start to see what we can actually do by sharing knowledge and skills across the waterway. But I was saying to Paresh Chowdhury, we're only about 7 hours flight as a continent from the east coast of India to the northwest coast of Australia. So very close in proximity, but likewise with internationally the quadrilateral agreement, which started out as a militarized defense strategy, but it seems as though it's flipped on its back now, and it's now a cultural diplomacy strategy. And we've gone across with the Brits and the Yanks to form AUKUS, and we've just dropped the Quad, which is a bit of a pity because a lot of my friends in Japan were getting very excited about the opportunity for that. But we could still benefit from cultural activity going forward. So, yeah, and the other interesting thing when I talked about working with the Indigenous community over a long period of time in Australia, the DNA connection between the Indian, largely Dravidians, to the Indigenous population is there's a great deal of interest in terms of cultural diplomacy, of sharing that art amongst those Indigenous communities to look for commonalities and then see through that exchange as to whether firmer, stronger ties can happen between India and Australia. But yeah, so that's what the co-founded with a guy called Shrikar, who's an academic at IIT in Hyderabad. And so we've been corresponding regularly between Australia and India, but I've only infrequently caught up with him in my probably about 10 trips now, I think, that I've had to India over time to deliver papers and conduct workshops. But COVID has put a big brake on everyone's actions and activities, and it's been a while since I've been on a plane. So hopefully that's going to change soon. So,
All right, final question for you. The question of smart cities is all over the Indian media and on top of the Indian mind space these days. Give us a dummy's guide. What makes a smart city smart?
Well, I talked about that a bit in the discussion group that we had around STEM and STEAM. So I look at the Indian development of the IT sector before the dot-com boom. There's probably lots of students listening and they don't quite understand the history of the IT industry in India, where everyone's mum and dad kept pushing them into computers and computer studies, and then the industry went bust, and everyone was unemployed, and no one was doing anything. But then the industry came back, and obviously Silicon Valley has kicked ahead, and India has obviously benefited. When you look at the number of CEOs in IT companies around the world, Google and the like, that are Indian diaspora. So, but it's this lust virtually for technology is going to answer all of our questions. I was having a bit of a laugh in Delhi. I was giving a workshop at World University on air quality, and was working with some senior scientists from CSIR NERI. And in the media, in the press, they're saying, we're going to invent these big vacuum cleaners, and we're going to suck up all the car exhaust at major intersections, and that's going to get rid of the pollution. So, well, yeah, okay, but so design's got to come on board and say, hey, look, let's look at the user-centered aspect of this. How can we change behaviours? What have we got to do apart from providing public transport rather than individual transport? How can we come up with an alternative using design thinking, and that that lateral approach that design brings to resolving those issues. So often used to show my students a screenshot of old MS-DOS. Do you remember MS-DOS?
I've used MS-DOS. I learned on MS-DOS.
As an interface, you
Yeah.
had to virtually be a coder to run a computer.
Frankly, I learned it.
And then they decided, well, we wanted to make computers not so much a geek's tool. We wanted to sell it to the public. And in order to sell it to the public, we had to bring in user experience designers, anthropologists, all of these guys. And I'm trying to think of the guy from Microsoft that I buddied up with in time, Surya Vanka, ex-Microsoft, and he was in that big expansion around the development of Microsoft Office Suite and like making it more user-friendly, and so people could actually use it. They don't actually have to code in order to communicate with people on screen anymore. So this pushback, and as I was saying, Google was out there with this technology and everyone's getting excited and all the investors were shoveling their money into it, and they're going to make billions. But then people said, we don't want it. Give us something we want. So obviously Google has to ask them what they want and then come back and then give them an alternative to what's on offer. So I think I was talking in the session private too. I always go back to the Disney cartoon of Wind in the Willows, and Toad from Toad Hall in Wind of the Willows was a mad, keen technologist. Anything new in technology he picked up and embraced and threw everything out that went before. And that's, to me, a bit like the IT sector. So they see a new thing and they launch into that, but they don't realize what they're losing. So the thing about Wind in the Willows is that the environment was being degraded by this new approach to development, and we should go back to caring for nature and the like, but do that through a deeper understanding of how designers can work with technologists and collaborate on providing a more user-friendly, human-centered outcome for project work and humanity. So, does that come close to an answer?
It does, actually.
Well done, Suresh.
Mark Watson, I think we've taken up enough of your time and we're at the end of the session. Thank you very much for that fascinating presentation of not just the triple bottom line, but the quadruple bottom line that includes
Indeed.
cultural factors. And that's a new element that we've learned in the Odisha Design Festival today. Thank you very much, and we hope to see you in India again soon.
Okay. Good night. Ciao.
All right. Our next session starts at 5:30 p.m. That's about 10 minutes from now, and we'll be joined by Shomi Ray. I'll see you then at 5:30.